Hello everyone, this is Miss Shally, and today we will be learning about the parts of the acoustic guitar. Now, learning about the different parts of our guitar is going to help us learn how to play. So grab your guitar and let's get started. Just like you have a head and a neck and a body, so does our guitar. Up here we have our headstock. Right here we have a neck, and then the body. And of course in the middle is the waist, and the waist is what we use to rest on top of our knees. On our headstock, you'll see 6 knobs. We call those tuners. Some people also call them tuning machines or tuning pegs, but we'll just call them tuners. It's easier. The tuners have a very important job. When we turn them, it either tightens or loosens the strings, and that's going to change the sound of the guitar. I'll give you an example. If I play my first string and I turn it, I just made it tighter, and so it raised the pitch, or it raised the sound of that string. If I loosen it, it went lower. Now, we don't want to play around with our tuners too much because that's going to throw our guitar out of tune. But that is the job. There are 6 tuners for 6 strings. Each of them adjusts the pitch of that string. Right below the headstock is what we call the nut. The strings lay over the nut, and there's actually little grooves that separate them equidistant apart. The nut is usually white or off-white or a bone color, and sometimes it is actually made of bone or just a hard material. It also raises the strings up just a little bit over our fretboard here. Now let's follow our strings all the way to the other half of our guitar. Here we have another white piece that the strings lay over, and it serves the same function, but it's called the saddle. It separates the strings, also lifts them up, and the saddle sits on top of what we call the bridge. The strings are held in place by these knobs here called bridge pins. Now let's go to our neck. You may have noticed that the back of your neck is a different color of wood than the front of your neck. This darker color wood on the front is called the fretboard. And on top of the fretboard, we have these metal rods called frets. Each fret has a number, numbered from closer to the nut all the way in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Now between each of the frets is called the fret space. Our very first fret space, though, is between the nut and the first fret. Here's our first fret space, our second fret space, our third fret space, our fourth fret space, and so on. You may notice dots inside the fretboard. Those are called inlays, and they serve a function as well. My first dot is exactly in the third fret space. And then I have one in the 5th, the 7th, the 9th, and the 12th. And in fact, my 12th fret space has 2 dots in it. Now let's go to the body of our guitar. Right in the middle of the body of our guitar, you'll see a giant hole. It's called a sound hole. Sound travels inside, it reverberates inside of the guitar, and comes out as well. Also, the body of the guitar vibrates too. It's made of special wood, but both on the front and the back. And when you play your guitar, if you put your hand on it, you'll actually hear those vibrations. All of those things help create that unique sound. Now below the sound hole, we have the pick guard. This helps protect the wood from my pick. So if I'm playing really hard, rocking out, sometimes the pick can scratch up against the wood, and that kind of wears out on the wood. They put a pick guard here to help protect the guitar. Not all guitars have a pick guard, but if they do, that's what their function is. And last but not least, we have the strings. Now the strings are all different and they all play different sounds. What's also important is they each have a number. Starting with our first string. The first string is closest to the floor. The second string is 1 string up. Then the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. So you kind of have to think opposite. The 6th string is the one that's closest to you, closest to your nose. The first string is the one that's closest to your knee, closest to the floor, closest to your toe. You understand. There are other really cool parts of the guitar that serve a really good function, but that's really all we need to know to play guitar. So let's review these important parts. Up here we have our headstock, the neck, the body, and the waist. On our headstock, we have our 6 tuning keys or tuners. We have the nut up here right underneath the headstock. Follow the strings all the way over, and we have the saddle, the bridge, and the bridge pins. On our neck, we have the fretboard, which is this whole piece. On the fretboard, we have our individual frets, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Then we have our fret spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Down on the body, we have the sound hole. Underneath the sound hole, we have our pick guard. And then finally, we have strings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, counting from the floor to your nose. Now let's take a look at the electric guitar. You can see that there's a lot of similarities between the electric guitar and the acoustic guitar. However, there are some major differences that really make a difference in how it sounds and how it functions. Let's start with the headstock. You'll see on this guitar, all of the tuning keys are on the top of the headstock. That's really important for when you go to tune your guitar. You'll also notice that an electric guitar doesn't have a sound hole. So, how does it amplify the sound of the strings? Listen to it right now. It doesn't sound like my acoustic guitar because it doesn't have that sound hole and that space inside of the guitar to reverberate. So what it has instead are electric pickups. I have one here and here. Inside these pickups are magnets that literally pick up the sound from the strings. They send it through the guitar cable and to my amplifier, and the amplifier sends out that sound. Speaking of guitar cables, here is my guitar cable, and I need to plug it in somewhere on my guitar. Where I plug it in is right here in my output jack. Sometimes output jacks are on the side of the guitar, sometimes they're on the front of the guitar, kind of wedged in at an angle. This is where mine is, so I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. Now I've turned on my amplifier, and you can definitely hear it this time. So let's say hypothetically, and this is actually not uncommon, that you have an electric guitar, but you don't have any cables and you don't have any amps. You just found one in your attic and you wanted to take guitar lessons. And so here we are taking guitar lessons with an electric guitar, no cable, no amp. And I'm here to tell you that is completely okay as you get started. Now, it's not going to be as loud as if you had an amplifier, but it's going to get the job done. So don't feel like you have to rush out and buy cables and buy amplifiers. Just get started with your first few lessons, and then if you decide that this is something you want to keep doing, then it's time to start choosing an amplifier to practice on. That's all for today's lesson on parts of the guitar. Until next time, this is Miss Shally. Have fun and keep playing.